Today, we are going to be covering the best new watches as of right now. On the run up to Christmas, normally around about October time, all the brands release their new watches to get that hype, that buzz for the Christmas season. So we're going to be talking about the best, the hottest watches that they've released from then until, now. At number one, we have a controversial one because it is the Patek Philippe Cubitus collection. Why did everyone go crazy about this? Why was this such a big deal? Well, the reason being is that this is the first collection Patek have released in 25 years. Yeah, you heard me. Now, there are some similarities between the new Cubitus and the Patek Philippe Nautilus, but they are very different watches at heart. And actually, controversial, I really like this watch. So within this new collection, you have three different variants to choose between. You have a Platinum 5822P-001. You have a Stainless Steel and Rose Gold 5821-1AR-001. And also you have the Stainless Steel model, which is the banging model, in my opinion, which is the 5821-1A-001. I think part of the controversy surrounding the Cubitus comes down to the size of the Cubitus. I mean, everyone in the industry is getting that little bit smaller, but this comes in at 45 millimeters. But please remember that this is a square watch, so traditional sizing kind of goes out the window. But it also comes in at 8.3 millimeters in thickness. It is beautifully thin, and that's partially because Patek's movements are handcrafted genius. Typically speaking, the higher value of the watch, the more expensive the watch, and the better the movement, the thinner the watch is. That's why in cheaper watches, normally you get thicker cases. The Cubitus sports the caliber 26-330 SC, which is a new caliber based on the 26-330. It was first introduced in 2019 in the Nautilus collection, but is now only seen in the 5811G. This caliber has 212 components, has a 22 karat gold rotor in the back of it. It beats at a frequency of 28,800 VPH and has a power reserve of 45 hours. It's water resistant to 30 meters and of course has that beautiful sapphire crystal glass and of course that kind of teak dial that we all kind of know and love from Patek. Patek are a brilliant brand. Now, some people might not like this, some people might like it like me, but that's the watch industry. Everyone has their own personal taste. So it's not really up to me to say whether this watch is great or not great. I personally think it's great, but I know that some people don't. But that is one of the hot releases of 2024, or this side of 2024. Next up, we have another classic brand, a brand that is the oldest watch brand in the world. We have Blancpain. And this new watch, I actually got hands-on with it, is the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe flyback with a beautiful blue dial. This is one of the, I said this in the video, this is one of the sexiest dials I've ever seen in a watch and will remain, I would say, in line with Vacheron Constantin dials in terms of beauty. This thing honestly plays with the light in a way that I've never seen before. This watch comes in at 43.6 millimeters in diameter, comes in full ceramic, a black ceramic, giving it a little bit more of a sporty flair to this watch. I feel like Blancpain are trying to break free from the more traditional branding that surrounds them. I feel like they're trying to break into a younger market, and that is definitely what this watch is doing. It has this beautiful blue dial. It is water resistant to 300 meters and has a case thickness of 15.25 millimeters. It has a fully open case back, and some of the stuff that this watch can do, insane. In the back of this watch, you have the caliber F385, which is a fully automatic movement and has 37 joules. It has 50 hours of power and 322 components. I feel like Blancpain in the industry is often overlooked. They're overlooked as the kind of a brilliant brand, but kind of too traditional for people. But I do like the direction they're going. They're making it more trendy, but they're not losing any of their quality. The next watch that was released quite recently that is extremely sexy, extremely hot, and actually looks a lot better in person than it does in images, in my opinion, is the Tudor Pelagos FXD GMT. The FXD, as most of you will remember, was originally developed for the French Navy, but now it is also suitable for the French Naval Aviation Unit. And this is partially because it's a GMT that can read multiple time zones at the one time. Before we crack into the specs, I just want to say that the superluminova on this thing is freaking awesome. Honestly, when it first came in, I was kind of worried about it. I was kind of thinking maybe the superluminova on the bezel will be weaker than the dial and it would just look a little bit of a mismatch. God, was I wrong. This thing is unreal when it comes to lume, but that's a watch nerdy detail. Let's go on to the specs. This watch comes in at 42 millimeters in diameter and is extremely light because it has a full titanium case. It comes in at 12.7 millimeters in thickness, and the lugs come in at about 22 millimeters in width. It comes in at 200 meters of water resistance and has a fully bidirectional rotating bezel. Is that how you would say it? I think that's how you'd say it. And it has a ceramic disc insert like we can see in the other Blancpain lines, for example. But it also has a COSC and METAS certified movement. Yes, you heard me. This is the movement MT5652-U, the U meaning it's METAS certified, and it's a self-winding mechanical movement with 65 hours of power. This watch, as FXD watches normally do, have the fixed strap bars. Now, some people really don't like that. Again, this is a personal preference thing. Personally, I really like it. It gives it a point of difference. But the one thing that I'm not as keen on this watch is the strap. I would like to replace that strap to something a bit more me. It's not to say it's bad. You know, it's just not me. The next watch on the list is going to cause even more controversy because it is a Bremont. This is the Bremont Supermarine 300 GMT. So I actually originally saw this watch on Instagram, on Reels today, and it's funny how things, let's just watch it together. Can't deny it, whoever's doing their marketing, that's great. They're using a trending audio, they're using some trending themes, they're going to Iceland, they're copying me essentially because I've been to Iceland so many times. Kind of looks like a copy of what I would do in a reel. I'll put one of them here so that you guys can see it. I'm not saying I set the trend there, but whoever's doing their marketing is doing a good job. They're making the watch aspirational. They're not just showing you a wrist roll. They're understanding that it's about the environment in which you wear the watch. It's good. So these new models, you have 3 different colors to choose between in terms of dial. You have a burgundy red, you have a green, and also you have a blue. Now the burgundy and the blue are both limited edition, but the green isn't. Don't ask me why, because I honestly don't know. The case diameter of these watches comes in at 40 millimeters. The case length comes in at 48 millimeters. The case depth comes in at 13 millimeters, and the lug width comes in at 20 millimeters. It has sapphire crystal glass with anti-reflective coating. It goes to 300 meters of water resistance, and it is a GMT model reading multiple time zones at the one time. Now, there was tons of controversy when Bremont rebranded, when that English brand that we kind of all knew essentially disappeared overnight. But brands tend to do this. I mean, not to this extreme, but they do tend to merge into different stuff. And I honestly think if you give Bremont 3, 4, 5 years, they will find their former glory. I actually quite like some of their designs. I think they get a lot of stick for rebranding when they maybe shouldn't. The movement on this watch is the modified caliber 11.5 BE-93-2 AV. This has 25 joules, beats at 28,800 VPH, and has 50 hours of power. Yes, this is a mass-produced movement, and they've definitely bought it in, but that's not always a bad thing. However, with that said, at this price point, around about the $4,000 mark, you would honestly expect them to start doing movements in-house. And when you have the likes of Tudor at $4,000 having their own movement with a COSC and METAS certificate attached to it, you know, it becomes hard to justify. With that said, I'm sure Bremont will find their stride. I do think they're a cracking brand, and you know, it'll just take them a while to find their feet. But I'd love to know what you guys think on that one. Let me know in the comments. It's always good to have those watch nerdy discussions. Next on the list, we have a new release from Hamilton, the Hamilton Khaki Field Engineered Garments Limited Edition, coming in at 36 millimeters, looking strikingly beautiful and kind of not like a limited edition, but then you flip it over to the back and you realize, damn, that's a limited edition. It's funny, guys, going totally off topic, but I was actually in LA with Hamilton and we met Ryan Reynolds, the woman that was in Bridesmaids, a ton of celebs, which is just absolutely crazy. And they were doing the Hamilton Behind the Camera Awards. And as someone that works with a camera and a lot of the time behind the camera, I really like the way that Hamilton are going. I love their marketing. I love their brand. I love their CEO. I love working with Hamilton. They are unbelievable, and I cannot praise them enough. This model comes in at 36 millimeters, so yes, it definitely is on the small side. It comes in full titanium, and the thickness comes in at 10.8 millimeters. It has sapphire crystal glass, it has 80 hours of power with that H10 movement that we all kind of know from the other khaki fields and love, and it's water resistant to 100 meters. This watch is a perfect example of boring is better. Boring lasts longer, should be the quote. Honestly, it's very plain, but that makes it brilliant. Next up, we have the first watch worn in space, the Omega Speedmaster, the new Omega Speedmaster, which everyone lost their minds about and forgot about the white dial, which in my opinion is just as sexy. But anyway, let's talk about this watch. You guys all know the history behind it. You guys all know what the vibes are surrounding this watch. So let's just discuss the specs. Maybe we'll touch on it a little bit. Yeah, it is sexy. Yes, it is a Speedmaster. Yes, it is new. Is it as sexy as the white dial? I don't know. This watch comes in at 39.7 millimeters in diameter, 13.4 millimeters in thickness, and the lug-to-lug comes in at 48 millimeters. It has a domed crystal that makes it look that little bit more vintage, and a beautiful blue-grey dial. It is water-resistant to 50 meters and has the Omega caliber 3861 manual winding movement with 50 hours of power. Essentially, they've taken the original Moon watch and they've made it extremely functional for today living in society nowadays. And they've done a bloody good job. It is stunning. If you love the history of the Speedmaster and you have a connection with the lunar landings, or you love space exploration, etc., this is probably the watch for you. There's no denying. It's awesome. The next watch we have is the King of Dials, and I've branded them the King of Dials because they are the King of Dials. I'm not normally a Grand Seiko fan, if I'm totally honest. Some of their designs just don't compute with my brain, but this one definitely does. This is the Grand Seiko SBGH 347 Icefall, as it's been nicknamed, because the dial looks like, you guys get it. This watch comes in at 37 millimeters in diameter. The lug-to-lug comes in at 44.6 millimeters, and the thickness comes in at 13.3 millimeters. It comes in full stainless steel, which Grand Seiko have actually branded on their website Ever Brilliant Steel. You gotta love watch marketing, eh? It also has the caliber NS85 movement, which is fully automatic and has 55 hours of power. The dial on this watch is just something, it's something out of a love story. Honestly, I'm such a sucker for beautiful textured dials. I'm a sucker for art, and essentially this is what this dial is. It's art. Now, previously, the Grand Seiko Snowflake was the hot watch. That's the one you couldn't get. It's the one that everybody wanted. And since it's been out for a good few years now, it's kind of lost a bit of its hype. And I think that the Icefall or something along those lines will probably take up the rest of that hype. This is a sexy watch. It's definitely made the list. The next brand we're going to talk about is Breitling. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Chronomat B01 limited NFL editions. Now, I don't really have a correlation or an affiliation to NFL. I don't really watch it. I'm more of a rugby fan. And previously, they've done rugby limited editions. They sponsor the Six Nations, and Scotland are the best team in the world. Am I right? But I do like brands that support sport and support the fans that support the sport. Did that come out right? Not to mention that the Breitling B01, the 42mm B01, is a chunkier watch, but it's a super sexy chunkier watch. It's very futuristic looking. The Breitling B01 comes in at 42 millimeters in diameter, 15.1 millimeters in thickness. However, Breitling's website weirdly says 151 millimeters in thickness, which is definitely not right. It is water resistant to 200 meters and has a fully in-house movement. It's the Breitling Caliber 01 fully automatic movement, and it has 70 hours of power, 47 joules, and beats at around about 28,000 VPH. Some of the colors that they brought out of this watch are extremely funky. They're extremely fun, but genuine fans of the NFL, just like I was rugby, would get these watches because they have an affiliation to the sport. And I understand that, and I get that. I think one of the reasons for me putting this brand or that these watches on this video is because I like watches that do something fun, something funky, something a little bit dangerous. In a society, in a world that's getting more and more opaque, they're doing something fun. I like that. The new classic Bel Canto from Christopher Ward. This was I don't like the Bel Canto, if I'm perfectly honest. Nothing against Christopher Ward, nothing against the watch. My opinion is that I don't like it. I just don't like the vibes. I'm sorry, I do apologize. I like the horology, I like the history, I like the watchmaking. I just can't get around the design. But with that said, I know that this is a really attractive watch to a lot of people, and the watch industry is personal opinion. So I'm definitely including it because it is cool, and what it can do for the price that it is awesome. The big attraction in the Bel Canto is that it has a stunning complication in it where it chimes every hour on the hour. And typically these watches are in the 10s, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds. But with Christopher Ward being, typically Christopher Ward, it comes in at under £4,000. I mean, it's great. It's not for me, but it's great. These watches come in at 41 millimeters in diameter, 13.2 millimeters in height, and 48 millimeters lug to lug. The case is in grade 5 titanium, and it of course has this beautiful FS01 chiming module. The movement in this model is the Sellita SW200-1, and that's the base movement, and then they've tweaked a couple of things to make it, the Bel Canto, to make it chime, and it has 38 hours of power. So yeah, the Bel Canto definitely made the list. And that is all from me today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please hit that subscribe button or follow our Instagram at Chisholm Hunter Watches, or my Instagram at HB Lifelens, or our podcast at Into the Mind Podcast, or just the Into the Mind Podcast. And that's all from me. I'm going to go sleep. See you soon.